Ở đây có những bạn nào mà đã quen thuộc với cái từ DevOps rồi? Có bạn nào? Có vẻ như là có khoảng 10% ở hai đúng không? Có các bạn có thể giơ tay cao lên một chút. Ok. Như vậy là chúng ta có khoảng 20% là các bạn đã biết về thuật ngữ DevOps. Mình muốn có cái thông tin như thế này thì các bác speaker sẽ biết được là cái mức độ các bạn hiểu biết về cái công ty thế nào thì sẽ adapt cái cách mà các bạn nói một chút. Mình hỏi một chút là ở đây thì các bạn sẽ có bao nhiêu người là developers? Chín 90% là developers đúng không? Wow. Bài nói chuyện hôm nay thì phần đầu tiên, 10 phút đầu tiên sẽ là CEO nói chuyện về Automic. Automic là ai và như thế nào. Và trước khi mà CEO đi vào cái phần này trong khoảng 10 đến 12 phút thôi thì mình muốn hỏi là ở đây bao nhiêu bạn đã từng nghe đến Automic? Mà không tính đội quân của Automic bên này. Như vậy là các bạn cũng chưa có nhiều người biết ngắm về Automic. Thì ở đây sẽ là một cơ hội để các bạn biết là Automic là công ty như thế nào và đã các bạn này sẽ không nói rõ về văn phòng Automic Việt Nam, nhưng mà sau đấy nếu mà các bạn muốn lên về văn phòng Automic Việt Nam thì các bạn sẽ có một số liên hệ và bên mình chắc chắn là sẽ trả lời tất cả câu hỏi của các bạn. Có một điều lưu ý là sắp tới tất nhiên là các bác ấy sẽ không thể nói bằng tiếng Việt, sẽ phải dùng tiếng Anh, và tiếng Anh của các bác ấy là native nên chắc chắn là nó sẽ hơi khó nghe một chút, thì mình sẽ cố gắng là có những cái phần ramp up in the middle ở giữa để các bạn có thể nắm bắt được cái bài nói chuyện của hai bác. So I will introduce Dr. Dilakar, our CEO of Automic, and he will give introduction about Automic and what business that we are doing. So can you please welcome him?
Oh, thank you. I have a...
Okay.
Did you ask a question about the operations and developers already?
I'm asking about, so we have around 10% of people knowing about DevOps and 80% of people developers.
Okay. Is this on? This lapel mic. Test, test, test.
Can you do something?
Yes, test, test, test. Test, test, test.
It's just for recorder. So you need to use this
okay.
one.
It's never a software problem, it's always a hardware problem. Always. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm very honored to be with you this evening. My name is Todd DeLauder. I'm the CEO for Atomic Software, and my colleague John Purrier, who I'll introduce to you later also, is our Chief Technology Officer, or CTO. What I was asked to do tonight, because I'm the CEO, is to talk for a very small amount of time because tonight is about technology and DevOps and you and your businesses and your careers. So I'll spend a little bit of time just telling you who Atomic is, a little bit of time talking about the market, because I think the market and what customers need automation for is a very important part of the equation. You have to have a business need to be able to do anything in software or in engineering. So I'll touch on that a little bit. By background, I am an electrical engineer by background. I was a software developer for many years, but then I became a CEO and I can no longer write code. So don't ask me anything about writing code. So let's talk about Atomic a little bit. So Atomic does automation, and we do automation of business process and the IT applications and systems that those business processes run on. So any of you know a company called eBay by name? It's a big auction company in the US. They sell things online. Atomic automates all of the auction process under eBay. Netflix, a video on demand company. Atomic automates all of the data orchestration behind Netflix data scientists. So when they ask you, you've watched these last 5 things, we think you might like these things, and they offer you a choice, that's based on data analytics that Atomic is orchestrating. So you get the idea, it's business processes where IT systems and applications depend. We're about 650 people globally. We have large development centers in Seattle, Washington, Paris, France, Vienna, Austria, and right here in Hanoi. All of the product that John will talk about in our DevOps area is developed here in Hanoi by a very outstanding team of elite software developers. I think several of them are here tonight. This is the only place we do our DevOps development, and it's right here in Hanoi. So Atomic, you don't know us by name, but we're behind the scenes of many companies. And what I thought would be interesting is very quickly just walk you through what that looks like. So you wake up in the morning and maybe you put on your slippers from a company called Payless. Oh no, you have Nike shoes. You put those on instead. These are all customers. Carphone Warehouse, Fossil, Barnes & Noble's books, TUI, eBay, Walmart, a big customer of ours. Okay, you get out of the bedroom into the kitchen. Oh, you recognize that logo? Yeah? Okay, cranberry juice, ice cream, soda, toasters, cabinets, electronics, electricity, water. We automate all of those processes for those companies as well. Out of the kitchen, you got to go somewhere. Oh, you take a boat. Atomic. Maybe you came here tonight by train. Most likely scooter, but maybe train. Cars. We automate Toyota, Porsche, BMW, Fiat, Mercedes. Airlines. I don't think many of you flew here tonight, but maybe if you did, maybe you took one more. There it is. Vietnam Airways, yeah. Also a customer. Banks. We have about 650 banks as customers all over the globe. We did some math just as a fun exercise to imagine how many people we affected with our automation software. And across all of these, food, we've got the food. Across all of these businesses, it's about 2,600 businesses. We estimated about close to 1 million employees in those businesses. And we projected almost 1 billion end customers. 1 billion people in the world are affected directly or indirectly by Atomic software. So you don't see us, you don't hear about us, but we're behind the scenes making these companies work. It's a very fun business to be in. Okay, so let's talk about why the business matters. You see this term a lot, digital transformation. And some companies start off digital, right? Gartner refers to them as Mode 2 companies. They're digital natives. Like many of you grew up not knowing a time when there wasn't a mobile phone or there wasn't even a web interface, right? Digital native companies. But there are a lot of companies that are what's called, Gartner calls Mode 1. They're more traditional companies, maybe stores, but they want to become more like the startup digital native companies. So they have to do a digital transformation. Take their old business and make it become like a new business. That involves software, it involves applications, it involves automation, and it's great for all of us because they're fun projects, great careers, and good businesses there. Part of the problem, though, in that digital transformation is that companies want to become more agile, so they want to move quicker. The problem is, how do you do that in a way that you're still reliable? You can't just roll out software changes without test, verify, test in pre-production environments, safety checks. You have to be reliable. So the whole question for all of us as we think about this DevOps world is how to be agile while at the same time being reliable and predictable. That's the tension. It's push and it's pull on those 2 points. But if you can master that balance just right, you can help with digital transformation. So why are companies pushing to automate? What's the driver behind it? It's because the kind of things they try to do are increasingly complex. Companies are buying other companies, they're merging, they're consolidating, they're outsourcing. They're doing things that mean you have to constantly bring IT systems in, pull them out, push one way, push another. It's difficult to do that all manually without breaking things. Automation is a way that you can solve this. Used to be simple because you'd have a business. That business would put up a firewall, they'd have a mainframe, and then it got complicated. We started adding things outside of the business. Outside companies, outside service providers, they needed to communicate inside into the firewall. It got more complicated. Then we started adding things above, cloud services, Amazon, Salesforce.com, and you can see the complexity that starts to grow. And the issue is that when all of these things work well, it's beautiful. You have business processes that run on applications, that run on infrastructure, and when it works well, it's fine. But it doesn't always work well because it's so complex and things break. And when they break, everybody knows about it immediately. And it's a bad problem for companies. So companies trying to go through this digital transformation also are very image aware, and they don't want to have problems that would become public embarrassments. Maybe I'll walk closer to the machine. There we go. And so this happens regularly where businesses roll out software updates or make changes and they break their business. Most recently was Twitter. Twitter went down when they rolled out a software update. On July 8th, 3 major corporations, New York Stock Exchange, Wall Street Journal, United Airlines, all stopped doing business because of software updates they rolled out that failed. This is my personal favorite, Starbucks coffee. I love coffee. On this day, Starbucks rolled out software change that broke their ability at the point of sale terminal to charge for a transaction and take money. So for 1 full day in the United States, Starbucks had to give away free coffee. That's embarrassing. Huh? All because of software updates that went wrong. So this whole topic we're going to talk about tonight, DevOps, the process of how you connect development to operations, how you do it predictably and reliably, is important, not just from a technical engineering standpoint, but from a business continuity standpoint. At Atomic, we deliver 3 levels of automation. Classic workload automation, service orchestration, and then application release automation, which is our topic for tonight. We're broader as a company, but tonight we're going to focus on that release automation topic. So I promise for the rest of the night, you won't hear Atomic by name. It'll just be about you, about DevOps, and about technology, okay? Thank you very much. With that, I'd like to introduce John Purrier, and John will talk to you about DevOps and how we do it and how we think about it. I'm going to mic you so they can record it. Left, right, and then here. This is so they can
record it for video later.
Yeah, for later. Got it?
Những sản phẩm mà Automate đang xây dựng CEO các bạn thông tin thêm về CEO các bạn có thể lên trang web của Automate.com thì sẽ biết về lịch sử CEO của bên mình. Và bác ấy đã có 25 năm làm trong lĩnh vực công nghệ thực tế và cũng là người khá nổi tiếng trên thế giới. CTO của bên mình là John Perrier và bác ấy sẽ tiếp tục nói về technology, và phần technology sẽ tập trung vào DevOps là gì và làm thế nào để automate cái process ở trong DevOps. Đến phần cuối cùng thì bác ấy sẽ nói về vision, cái cách nhìn của bác ấy về automation trong tương lai. Đấy là cái 3 phần chính mà mình có thể để các bạn có thể follow. Sẽ có phần Q&A. Một số câu hỏi đã xem cho bên tổ chức trước đó thì bên mình sẽ show tất cả các câu hỏi trước đó, và sau khi đã trả lời tất cả các câu hỏi đó thì bên các bạn vẫn hoàn toàn có thể đặt câu hỏi ngay trong hội trường này, và bên mình sẽ trả lời mỗi một câu hỏi. Các bạn sẽ nhận một cuốn sách, trong đó có chữ ký của hai bác. Tất nhiên là chữ ký này cũng không bán được tiền nhiều đâu, nhưng mà đấy là quà kỷ niệm của Automate để cảm ơn các bạn đã tham gia sự kiện này.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for having me here and having Atomic here. Appreciate it. Excellent turnout, standing room only, love it. My name is John Perrier. I am the Chief Technology Officer of Atomic. And what I'd like to talk to you tonight is about DevOps, about continuous delivery, and then a little bit about automation and where we see the future of automation. So, I've been doing this for quite a while. If you looked at my background, you can see it goes back into the, the olden days. I started at IBM, but my second big job was at Microsoft. And I was at Microsoft for 14 years during the 1990s. And I ran the team that, and you'll either love me or hate me when I say this, that built Exchange Server. Thank you. So when we built Exchange Server, we were actually very cutting edge, we thought, right? So if you remember, a lot of you guys can't remember back that far, but if you remember how we built software, and particularly at Microsoft, one of the largest software companies in the world, we were on 1 year, 2 year, 3 year release cycles. My particular team took a lot of time and effort to really get our processes tight, and we were very proud of ourselves if we could get a build done each week and hand it off to test. So test would have an entire week to actually go through, and then we shrank our release cycle down to 12 months, right? So we were very happy with that. We had 12 people just on the build team that was making sure that changes that were checked in were correct, right? We ran through our build test and our smoke test, and we made sure that if somebody broke the build, that we called them in the middle of the night, and so some of you may have been on the other end of that phone call. But that was really state of the art for 1995. Recently, I was the CTO of a startup in Portland, Oregon, United States, called AppFog, and we were, a typical scrappy little startup, less than 50 people, but we were running a platform as a service company, and we, with less than 50 people, we had over 150,000 customers. They were running every single day over 100,000 applications. We ran them on 8 different public cloud instances, Amazon, in a variety of places around the world, Hewlett-Packard, Rackspace, some other clouds as well. To run all of those applications, right, we had 4 operations guys. So less than half the guys that I had at Microsoft just doing builds were running this entire infrastructure. And the way that we did that was through automation and through a lot of the DevOps techniques that we'll talk about tonight. So what really triggered the switch? And you can see, you know, it used to be we had silos, right? We had developers, and developers did their thing, and then they kicked it over to the QA guys, the testers. And the testers would do their thing, then they would kick it over to the pre-production guys, and then they would set up their staging environments, and when they were happy with that, they would give it to the production guys, right? And then the production guys would set it up, and if any time during this flow, something didn't work, then the whole system just broke down. So we're seeing, you know, kind of this weak coordination between our various disciplines, development and operations. And you know, if you take a look at that level of specialization, that causes inefficiencies because you're setting up environments over and over again that might or might not match. You know, have handoff problems as you move your products down the pipeline, right? And so your releases are slow, your utilization is low, and then, you know, we built software that was really big, right? So man, if you take a look at Windows, right? Millions of lines of code, and I can't even tell you the build and deployment issues that Microsoft had trying to build a version of Windows, but you can probably derive it from the fact that it took them, you know, 5 years to get Windows 7 out the door, right, and another 3 years to get Windows 10 out the door. So, and then, you know, the last point here is the process, you know, not having visibility into the process, and just having the chance that somebody somewhere along the line has forgot a file, somebody didn't check in a dependency, and it's all going to fall apart at some point in time. So, what is DevOps? Why do we do it? It's to solve those problems. It's to be agile, it's to get more velocity, and it's to build better, more reliable software. So, how many here are, you know, somewhat familiar with DevOps? Okay, well, we got the perfect audience then. Okay, so DevOps really is not just technology, right? So I'm not going to stand up here and say, here's the thing that you buy and deploy it, and now you're a DevOps person, right? So DevOps really is a cultural shift, a change in how companies build, validate, and deploy software. And one of the things that has to change is you need a much more collaborative environment where your developers actually talk to your operators, right? Your production guys talk to the guys that are actually building and validating the code. You do have to trust automation. Automation is a tool that lets you do more with less, right? And the cool thing about it is not only do you do more, you do it more reliably, because with automation you basically do the same thing over and over and over again, and really what I like to say is we let the computers do what computers are good at, right? So why should you have a human being like running scripts or pushing buttons or, you know, whatever they have to do, copying files, when a computer can do that over and over and over again, 24/7, and do the same thing every time. If you don't measure your process, right, you'll never know how good it is. And one of the things that is really very cool about DevOps is the more you measure, the more you can optimize. The more you optimize, the more value you get out of the process, the more data that you get fed back. And so there's a really nice virtuous cycle that goes on with the measurement and the ongoing mediation of the process, right? And like I said, it really it fosters a collaborative environment across all of your technical people, right? There's value in the fact that, you know, your CIO or your managers can see, you know, here's the velocity of software that we're building, here's the number of defects that are going down, but it also makes it more fun to actually build software, because, you know, you can deploy, you know, not just once a week or once a year, but you can deploy many times a day. In the previous example that I used of AppFog, we had approximately 15 developers in the company, and we were doing 8 deploys a day across 8 different public cloud infrastructures. And we did this every single day, right? So, you know, to kind of reiterate, you know, problems are addressed in a timely manner. You know, one of the things I do want to point out is that if I go back, notice that these are in squares, right, that are chasing themselves, as opposed to the old way of, you know, kind of development, you know, through to production. DevOps encourages iterative development and iterative delivery and iterative deployment. So as things kind of move down the deployment pipeline, there are iterations that are going on inside, you know, each of the stages, whether it's development, unit testing, QA, system testing, or deployment, environment creation and deployment, right? So we can tell very quickly if there's any place in the process that isn't working correctly, right? And because, you know, we're iteratively working on this, it gets fixed very fast, as opposed to, wow, I've got it, you know, all the way down into system testing and it broke, I got to go all the way back and do another build, right? I can do this very iteratively and very quickly, right? So that's okay.
So you have a good understanding about web opportunities, and extra anything to share or any question? Ai có câu hỏi là chia sẻ thì cho buổi này vui hơn một chút không?
Asking for questions?
Maybe they want to make the environment is more creative.
Okay.
Hi John, just hear about that. You when go to the process of business, you can see that which have problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of business in the world, right? So there's all kind of business models on how you can, you know, address the very best and the exact problem and how to solve it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question is, there's a lot of different kinds of businesses doing a lot of kind of software development, right? Yeah, so this is actually, this describes a process that can be adapted to whatever environment that you're in, right? So if you are, you know, let's say a software company, right, you're doing everything from, you know, the idea of the software all the way through to how you deliver it to customers. Or if you're a bank, banks use a lot of big packaged products. You can bring those applications in, you know, kind of what I would say midway through the process. So think about the company that's developing your software as doing the development part, right, and the QA part, and then giving it to you, and you now own the deployment piece and the update piece, right? So there's a lot of different ways to apply this. This is kind of a general, DevOps is really a general set of processes and techniques, and it's very adaptable.
Thank you for that.
Sure. Right. So as I said, right, we have changed how we build software, and you'll notice what's the one thing I haven't said so far in this presentation? Containers, right? Docker, right? There's the new thing. There's microservices. All of that doesn't matter in the concept of DevOps. So whether or not we're building containerized microservices-based environments, or if we're deploying, let's say, that banking application onto bare metal data center farms, It's all the same. You know, there's a certain style of delivery, a content pipeline, if you will, that is adaptable to all of those environments. Right? So we've changed how we do development. You'll notice a lot of the logos over here. Maybe some of you have used Docker or Chef or Puppet or Jenkins. Jenkins is a big one. Jenkins users here? Yeah, a few, right? So if you think about how developers, you know, they want to use the languages that they like, they want to use the frameworks that they like, the databases that they like, right? They don't want to be constrained, you know, saying you must write in Java and use, you know, a DB2 database. This gives the IT folks within companies the freedom to let the developers choose the technologies that they want to use and still have control and governance and insight over the end-to-end process. So we talked about the delivery pipeline. So I'll tell you right now, right? How many people out there are looking at that picture going, that's not right? He just talked about iterative loops and things. That looks like just like a single process that, you know, sounds like Microsoft from 20 years ago. Guilty. This picture doesn't actually represent, but it's a good way of thinking about it. So a continuous delivery pipeline, you know, starts with developers. There's things that go on to validate the code, and it ends up over here in deployed to production. There we go. It looks more like this, right? So as you're moving, you know, in development, there's a lot of iterative loops, right? So as a developer, you know, you may want to be sitting on your laptop, developing against a virtual box that you've deployed locally, sitting in your favorite coffee shop. And you can do that, and you know, you're interacting with your source code repositories, maybe GitHub. You have a continuous integration environment. So when you go ahead and you finally check in the code that you've been working on all day, Jenkins or something like that will pick it up and run the unit test for you automatically, etc. Right? So there's this iterative loop, and then it goes into really the transition between development and production, and that's where this idea of DevOps really becomes very powerful, because you know, the developer doesn't want to care about what data center is going into, what kind of hardware it's going to be running on, what, you know, how to set up, you know, your SQL clusters, you know, what the credentials are for production systems. He really doesn't want to know about that, right? The production guys are very concerned about that. So there's this idea that, you know, the collaboration between production and developers kind of comes into the middle, and this is where the DevOps techniques become very powerful, because in our continuous delivery pipeline, we can now define rules and policies that say when this application's coming down the pipe, when it gets to here and we're going to get ready to stage it for production, we need to replace the database that the developer has chosen with our production database, or we need to set up a disaster recovery scenario that might be geographically dispersed across the globe. Those sorts of things. So developers worry about what they worry about, the production guys worry about what they worry about, and somebody in the middle is actually worrying about the topologies and the business policies, and that's where DevOps becomes very powerful. Right? So this is a much more complex slide to kind of describe the same thing that I've been talking about in terms of, you know, the iterative pieces that happen in a DevOps pipeline. And remember, you know, that I said that DevOps is not just tooling, right? So it's processes, but it's really collaboration. And in order to you know, kind of be effective of this, or how, you know, start your DevOps journey, you really have to start with the fact that you want your developers and your testers and your production guys to talk, right? So you need to create an environment where that happens. You know, we can't live in silos anymore, right? So you'll hear us talk about application release automation, and what that really is it's a technique, right, or a set of techniques that allow us to bring the developers in to the conversation, the operation guys into the conversation, and then provide the tooling to actually, you know, make that continuous delivery pipeline work, right? So release automation is super critical in this process. So we wanted to show you, you know, a little bit about some of the engagements that we have gone into as a company, and kind of give you an idea for the scope and the scale of what has happened in those, right? So the two I'd really like to point out to, Task is a healthcare provider, a provider of services. And they went through an entire journey with us. We engaged with them. We had conversations with them around, you know, DevOps and how it can improve their processes. If you go onto our website, there's a really good description of the journey that they went through. They actually created a video for us, so I'd encourage you to go look at that. But in short, they went from a 10-hour deployment down to minutes, 45 minutes or so. And at the same time, what they did is they modernized their entire application structure from an old school, very traditional, you know, that's the 10-hour deployment piece, to they are currently running containerized deployments on Amazon Web Services. So it's a really good example of how you can modernize, how you can take care of, you know, take advantage of public cloud infrastructures. And the video can show you kind of step by step on how they did that. Bet365, gambling site in the UK, right? Came to us, and their problem was they have 80 applications deployed across 1,000 servers, right? And they needed to update these pretty much every day, right? So the problem was that they had gotten themselves into a situation where the process that they were using just was not scalable. They had people that were in the middle of the process. They, you know, lost track of their configurations, those sorts of things. So taking their problem and you know, applying automation to it, codifying the policies and the processes that they use to take their applications from their developers, making small changes, right? So that, you know, if you're making multiple changes every day, you're not making big changes. You might be pushing 1 or 2 bug fixes in some cases, or one, you know, kind of feature change, but it goes all the way down the pipeline and out to, you know, one of the 1,000 servers. That's what we did with Bet365, and then you can see, you know, with Charter Communications, you know, reduced by 2/3 the time, and you know, O&B, which is a bank, very, very similar to the question that you asked, and we basically, you know, kind of cut their time in half. So this is real, and it can give you tremendous benefits. It can give you tremendous benefits as developers, right? So I saw a lot of developers here. I wrote code, right, for a long time. I carried a pager. You know, some of you may have pagers on you right now. You know, something broke. They paged me in. These processes, you know, can really help reduce the breakage that you might get when dependencies are not met. Somebody forgot to check in a file. All of a sudden, the build is breaking, etc. Those types of issues, from a developer's perspective, can really be taken away. And like I said, it's really nice as a developer. You guys have a lot of influence over what your organization is doing in terms of process and how you build software and how you deploy software and how it gets monitored and so on and so forth, right? So it's really nice to be able to say, look, we think for this particular set of applications, Java is the right framework, but for that set of applications, we want to use Go, right? Or Python is really our language of choice, right? Having that freedom as a developer is super, super nice. Questions on that? I'm gonna move a little bit into where we see the future of automation, and talk a little bit about where we think we're going with it. But I'll stop here and take questions. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Trước đấy anh có thể giới thiệu qua là anh đến từ công ty nào và biết bản thân.
Yes, I'm Hwang. I'm from Sotruk, a Korean company.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you, and I'm very thank you to your introduction about automation and the solution to to reduce a lot of resources for product release. But according to your introduction, you have 4 pillars, including the measure, right? So the more the more you can measure, the more reliable you can give to your customer. And I'm sure that in reality, there are many cases it's not easy to measure. So in those cases, do you think that the automatic solution is suitable or not? And can you give some example that your solution may not fit?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
May not.
Oh, that may not fit? Okay. Oh. What company did you say you're with? No, no, just kidding. Sometimes we can't measure everything that we want. We can't get the monitoring data that we want. But the fact of the matter is if you plan for it and you put platforms in place that support it, like Atomic, right, you'll get a lot more data out of the system, right? And I do believe that if you don't measure it, you have no idea what's going on. And if you have no idea what's going on, you're not doing your job correctly, my view. What is our company's product not suitable for? Yeah. I'm gonna let the business guy answer that.
If you don't want to move fast, if you want to go out of business eventually, then you don't want our products. Seriously though, you'll see all of your competitors, maybe your companies, but for sure your competitors, there's pressure in the business to go faster. Give me more, give it faster, make it more reliable. That's what automation gives you. Not just Atomic, this is not a commercial for Atomic, because I'm an evangelist for automation. I believe in automation. It's how you do things repeatably, reliably, and at pace. John talked about Bet365. They do 80 application releases a day, 35 steps to each release. It's like an engine. And the only way that works is because they've automated it. So I'm sure there were examples where a company so small, doing so few things at such a slow pace, that automation may not help them. That's possible. But I think for most modern companies or companies trying to become modern, going through that digital transformation, automation is a layer that you want to start with. Yeah?
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, and I will say, having been involved with the startup world for quite a few years, every startup right now starts with automation. You know, the things like that you do over and over again, the better, right? So it really is the way things are moving into the future. And as Todd said, you know, there's some evidence to say that if you don't modernize, if you stay doing the same thing that you're doing, if you don't start adopting, you know, DevOps processes, policies, and techniques, that, you know, over the next 10 years, you will become irrelevant and you will be out of the market. So we actually truly believe that this is very critical to the success of companies.
DevOps engineers 30% more pay.
Oh yeah, that's right. So as Todd just pointed out, that at least in the U.S., folks that are identifying themselves as DevOps engineers or DevOps managers are now starting to command 30% more pay than they did pretty much doing the exact same job with a different title. Yeah. So if you want more money, put that on your resume. All right. I'm going to go on.
Hi, I'm Giữa and I'm from ITLCHN Software. And yeah, I have a question about that. I see on the slide that mostly improvement in the automation is about the time to deliver the production and yeah, the complexity in the management. But how about a company, a big one? For example, my company, we have 5,000 to 8,000 people who get due to the traditional by-line production. What's the risk when we turn out to the automation process, and you know, maybe main risks we have to face when we turn to the automation like you present. So what is the risk, and it's worth to try or something? I mean, yes.
Yeah. So if I understand what you're asking, you know, we are presenting things. We're talking about velocity, you know, time to customer interaction with software and so on. There are a lot of other benefits, right? We talk about reliability, we talk about repeatability, you know, and we talk about being able to create higher quality software.